there was such a standard that I held myself to in what healing looked like and what that meant. And I feel like I constantly get judgment on the choices that I made, or
Yeah.
even the choices I make to this day. And I felt like a lot of those judgments came from people not understanding what the
Yeah.
reality of living it was. And so I wanted to create a space where I could talk about it and bring more awareness to what the reality of it is versus the image that society paints domestic violence or sexual assault, any of those things as, because I think the reality is so much different than what we make it in our heads sometimes.
Welcome to the That's Where I'm At podcast. I'm Laura, happily divorced after spending years with a narcissist. I believe keeping secrets will make you sick and that they always come to light in the end. As women, we're often told to be quiet, don't share your story, don't talk about the things we go through. It's making women sick, sad, and suicidal. We don't have to be on the other side to share our story. This show is for the women still in the middle of the mess, but showing up bravely as they heal. It's time to share these stories with each other so we can learn, grow, and heal together. I'm Laura, and that's where I'm at. Please take note that this episode may contain subjects that may be triggering to certain listeners. Please take care when listening today. Hi, guys. Welcome back to the That's Where I'm At podcast. Today I have Lyndsey. Lyndsey Hackford is a survivor, advocate, and host of the podcast Living in the Aftermath. After surviving years of coercive control and domestic violence, she now speaks about the psychological realities of abuse, why leaving is so complex, and how survivors can find meaning and purpose after trauma. Hi, Lyndsey. I'm so glad you're
Hello.
here.
Thank you so much for having me. Yay
Oh,
to talk
yes.
about trauma.
Yay, trauma.
Yeah, I know, right? I
You know,
do actually enjoy it, funny enough. I feel like I learned something after every
Oh, yes.
conversation. So,
No, listen, the whole reason I started this was, and why I named my podcast what I did is because, like, the people behind me, I can pull them forward. The people ahead of me can pull me forward.
yep.
And so we all learn from each other. I've learned so much doing my podcast. I've learned from everybody. So I always get some sort of nugget. And that's why we keep doing this work. And also, we have to warn the others of what's going on out
Yes,
there. So,
I agree. I wouldn't have listened to anybody. So I think talking about it in a way that makes it more relatable rather than just saying a red flag. Well, what does that mean? So
yes,
I think,
exactly. Okay, so I
yeah.
want to start with how old were you when you met your abusive ex?
I was at the ripe old age of 16, where I
Yeah,
knew all the things. Like you
of
ask any
course.
16-year-old, and I had every answer to every
I
question.
I was
So,
the same way. I remember.
yeah. Yep. So, very, very young and very just naive. I think a lot of that came from religion and just
Yeah.
not really ever finding my own voice or my own value or really
hmm
understanding where that should come from.
Right, exactly. And so what was your household like? What was your home life like?
So my home life was, I mean, good, all things considered. I still have a really good relationship with my parents and my siblings. I'm the
Okay.
oldest of four. And so I always make the joke that I was the test child, and I still stand by that. I have
Yes.
five children, and so I understand my oldest was my test child.
Yeah.
And so
I tell my oldest the same thing. I'm like,
yes.
I don't know, we've just figured everything out on you. Sorry about that.
Well, and that's the thing I think every parent does, right? Because you're never going to parent the same way that your parents do.
No.
And so I think there was a lot of, I don't even, turmoil, I guess would be the best word to put with it, because I was the kid that just always had to push back. I had a question. I wanted
Okay.
to talk. My dad would tell me all the time, you would get in trouble a lot less if you would talk less. And I was like, well, you're
Okay.
probably right. Because I just
Right.
had a question for everything. The
Right.
whole I
Okay.
told you so did not work well for me as a child.
Right.
And so, I mean, just things where I constantly questioned myself. I was also raised in a very strict religious household. My family is still very active in that religion, but I have
Okay.
since distanced myself because I attribute a lot of that to what led to my abuse.
Yeah.
I was raised Mormon,
Uh-huh.
and in that religion, a lot of that teaches you that the men know better because they're
Right.
getting direct revelation from God,
Right.
and you're supposed to just rely on your husband, and you're the stay-at-home mom and stay-at-home wife that cultivates this beautiful life and this beautiful household. And so that was really the only dream that I ever had growing
Right.
up. I didn't have a career that I aspired to.
Right.
And so the only thing I really did that I loved was competitive dance.
Hmm.
And I remember my abuser caught on to that very early on, and he was like, that's how your parents are controlling you. Because, like, when I
Wow.
wouldn't clean the bathroom or when I wouldn't clean my room, my mom would say, if you don't do this, I'm not going to take you to dance. And so I would
Oh,
complain, as any teenager would, and be like, my mom isn't going to take me to dance. This is so stupid.
right.
And he was like, that's how they're controlling you. You need to regain your voice. You should quit dance, which is something that I had done since I was 3 and I was
Yeah.
16. So this was something that I had done my entire life.
Right.
And I one day was like, yes, this is a good idea. And I just didn't go. And I remember that I felt so powerful and supported in that moment.
Yeah.
And now looking back as my adult self and
Yeah.
knowing what that moment was, I am so sad for that version of me
Oh,
because I
yeah.
never saw what that was in the moment.
Right. And so let's talk about that. That was him isolating you, right?
Hmm.
And starting the controlling of you, right?
Yes.
You should do this because it's your parents' fault. So now
Hmm.
we're going to isolate you. He's going to push you and see if you actually are going to like go along with what he's saying. So lots of red
Yep.
flags there. Even if somebody's not an abuser, to have them encourage you to quit something you love is really, that's a red flag anyway. Um,
Huge.
and was he the same age as you?
So he was a senior when I was a
Oh, okay.
sophomore. So we were
Okay.
very close in age, but he
Yeah.
was a little bit older than me. And I was always kind of the loner. I didn't have a lot of girlfriends because I did competitive dance. I wasn't really involved in school. I went to dance. And even my dance friends, I didn't ever really feel accepted or understood by
Mm,
them. And so it was really easy when this person came in and was sharing trauma from their childhood with me, and I
yes.
felt like I could support them and I could care for them. And then he's helping me gain my voice and gain my independence.
Yeah.
And I think even as I would say into my 20s and maybe even into my early 30s, I don't think that I would have seen what he did to me then as isolation. And I think that's why these
Right.
conversations are so important because in my
Yeah.
mind, he never said, don't go to dance. He said,
Exactly.
do this because it's good for you. And so
Exactly.
I never would have seen it as isolation or something that was bad for me. I saw it as someone supporting me and standing up for me in a way that I had never felt because I had always felt misunderstood by people in my life. And they never accepted why I question things or who I am and how
Yeah.
I do things. And so it
Right.
was a very interesting dynamic to face as a teenager.
Well, and that's something, there's a few things in there, but you talking about even from the beginning, you saying that I always ask questions and everybody tells me I'm being too difficult and all these things. But
Mhm.
when you have a high control religion, and so when you have, and if your parents are ascribing to that, you aren't really probably a problem. You are
Yeah.
just asking questions, which is
Hmm.
a normal child thing to do.
Yes.
Actually, this entire world, we are allowed to ask questions. It's people, because I was the same way. There's a reason why I have a microphone in front of me because nobody wanted me to talk. Nobody
Yeah.
wanted me to talk. It's like, okay, so I guess I'm going to have a microphone. It's like, let me just heal all of that and we'll just go the opposite direction. Because people often told me the same thing. You're so
Hmm.
difficult. Why don't you just let things go? Like, why are you harping on this? No, not why am I harping on this? Why aren't you answering the question? Because maybe the question or the answer was supposed to be, Lyndsey, you're supposed to just fall in line.
Yes.
And you're not falling in line.
And you know what the funny thing is I got that exact answer. I remember going to my dad one time, and I don't remember if this was when I was married to my abuser or if it
Mhm.
was prior to that, but I remember asking him, like, Dad, don't you want me to find this for me? Like, don't you want
Yeah.
me to believe this because I believe it, because something
Yeah.
I connected with resonated within me?
Yeah.
And he was like, do you want the real answer? And I was like, yes, I really do.
Yeah.
And he was like, you do it because that's what we're told to do. And
Wow.
that was one of the most disheartening moments,
Yeah.
even still to this day. And I mean, I don't know if he'll
Yeah.
hear this. I would have this conversation with him. But even still to this day, it's really difficult for me to have a very honest, open conversation with them. And I didn't really ever learn that in my childhood. I don't know if my parents do have a very good communication. It seems that they do. And
Okay.
I mean, really, when you think about it, what do you know about another person's marriage behind
Right.
closed doors?
You don't. Yeah.
So, I mean, perception, I mean, they've been together a really long time. They have 4 children. They're still together. They're taking care of my grandfather who has Alzheimer's. That's a really stressful situation, and
Yeah.
they're doing it well. So clearly something is working, but those lessons were never passed on to me, and that became really detrimental in my early years with someone finding myself and figuring out what that was. I never had an uncomfortable conversation with my parents. And so
Yeah.
it made it really easy to avoid those moments in my marriage.
Yeah.
And
That
that
makes
turned
sense.
really toxic very quickly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if you're being told that when you ask questions or when you stand up for your wants and needs, you're being difficult, then it's easy to never bring that up in your
Yeah.
relationship. And then the other thing you talked about was that I think is very important that we say to people is that he never told you you couldn't go to dance, right?
Hmm.
And he never told you that you shouldn't go to dance. He just said this would probably be good for you if you
Yep.
didn't. And that is how it starts and how the
Yes.
isolation starts and how now you've self abandoned and given up everything. And so this is how, that's why when people say, why didn't you leave at the first red flag? It's like, does that
That
sound like
wasn't one.
does that sound like a red flag? It is a red flag, but does it
Yeah.
sound like one? No, it doesn't sound like a red
No,
flag.
especially to a 16, 17-year-old
Right.
girl. Why would you know that that could turn toxic? And it very, very, very much did. I can look now and I lost all communication with all of my family, all,
Yeah.
and I am very close to all of my family. And I was with my abuser for a total of 18 years, just so
Okay.
people have some context.
Yeah.
And I would say probably like the last 3 to 5 years, I lost all communication with them. But some of that, we were living in the same city. We were still doing things
Yeah.
in the same vicinity within the area of each other. But I chose not to have that relationship with them because we would go to family, and I love giving this example because in the
Yeah.
moment I never saw it as a problem. So we would go to family events and he would kind of sit by himself, play on his phone, not really involve himself. And my family is very active. They're very loud. They're very, you got to
Yeah.
just insert yourself because there's a lot of things happening. And so they would play games and do different things. And we would go home after. And he was like, they don't include me in things. I don't like going over there. What have
Yeah.
you said to them that makes them not want to include
Yeah.
me?
Oh
And I
my
was like,
God.
I have said nothing. Like, I have said nothing to them.
Well, it's
And
always
so
our fault. It's always our
exactly. And so then I would call them and they didn't like him. From the get-go, they didn't
Yeah.
like him. And so I didn't really want to give them more things not to like, but I also
Oh,
didn't want to keep arguing with him at home.
yeah.
So I would call them and I would be like, guys, like, could you just invite, like, include him a little bit more, involve him a little bit more?
Yeah.
And they were like, we are. What are you talking about? And so it got so exhausting for me because we never fixed it because the problem really wasn't real. I thought I was
Yes.
trying to fix a real problem, but
Right.
there was never a solution because it wasn't a real problem. And it
Exactly.
got so hard for me to manage that
Yeah.
I chose to cut off the communication with them because that's my husband. That's the father of my children.
Yes.
And so I never saw it as him cutting off communication or isolating
Yeah.
me from my family because that was the choice I made.
That's exactly. And that's how quickly and easily it happens because
Hmm.
it's just easier. We choose our husband because that's really what we've been societalized and really what we've been taught to do. Really, that's the healthy thing anyway that you should do.
Yeah.
Like that's you move up, you move up from your family to your husband,
Hmm.
right? And that is positive when it's positive, when it's a good thing. But that's how easily, right? That you were just like, I'm trying to fix this and it won't be fixed and it can't
Yeah.
be fixed. So little did you know that it wasn't a real problem. And listen,
Yeah.
I know that people are listening to this and it's resonating because it resonates with me.
Yep.
I totally get it. My ex would be that I'm not going to go. It doesn't seem like anybody wants me there. Literally, you're sitting in the corner, not talking to anybody. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. Like,
So they probably don't want you there, really.
they probably don't like you because they don't even know you.
And if they did know you, they probably still wouldn't like
Right.
you. Probably.
But we're not going to say that part.
I should have, though. Like, I
Oh
look
my
back now and
God.
I just wish that I would have been. I wish I would have known what I know now. And I always
Of
say, you don't
course.
know what you don't know. But it,
Exactly.
like I said, it just makes me so sad for that version of myself that, because
Yes.
that is the dumbest thing on the planet, that we're convincing another grown man to feel comfortable in public.
Yeah.
Like, be your own human. And
Right.
I felt so responsible for him feeling comfortable in
Yes.
every environment that we were in. It was exhausting, and I never succeeded. I was
And
always left feeling like I was a failure.
well, and that's something that I wanted to bring up is that you even said at some point in there that you were trying to manage the
Hmm.
situation. It's like it's not our job to manage it, but when we're in abuse, if we've grown up in like high control, situations, religions, homes, we think it's our responsibility to make everybody okay,
Yeah.
especially if there's not. I just know that in my home there was some things and you just had to manage the piece. And so
Hmm.
that's I went into my marriage like that. I was managing all the situations. Gosh, I don't know about you, but man, to not have to do that anymore, man, to be able to breathe and be like, this is not my circus. These are not my
Yep.
monkeys. This is not
Yep.
my problem. And I had a friend who said something like that about, meeting somebody and maybe if they have some issues, you can help them with it. And I like was like, no, 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 we don't do
That
that.
triggers me having you just say that.
Oh
I'm
my
like, no,
God.
I don't fix
No,
anyone.
no. Oh, yeah. There's people that I talk to that say things, and listen, I cannot, like, look, I could maybe bite my tongue, but I can't. I'm like, let me save
No.
you. Let me save you some time. No, let me save you
Hmm.
decades of your life. Don't
Yes.
do that. People who say, like, well, I have to do it because my husband won't. Okay, well then he won't, and then that's it. And like
Yeah.
then let his life fall apart. And if that, I don't know. Sorry, I'm very much a like I don't give any more chance. This is why I don't date.
No. See, and that's the thing. I think that's why I did struggle so hard, even considering dating, because
Yeah.
in my mind, the standard of what I would accept was
Yes.
so high that no one was going to meet that.
Right.
No one was going to accept that I was not going to choose them over my kids ever again.
Yes.
And that was just something that I wasn't willing to compromise because of the trauma that they had gone through, because of the choices that I made.
Uh-huh.
That was just one that I was not willing to waver on. If my now 10-year-old, but when I started dating my husband, I think
Yeah.
she was maybe 6. I was like, if she has a nightmare, she's laying in bed with us. Like, and if that's a
Right.
problem, we're not meant to be together. And that's
Yeah.
totally okay. And I was at a place where I was genuinely okay with that, but
Yeah.
he just stepped up in a way that I didn't ever think another human would. But the standard of what I was like, I am not your person I won't manage your
Yeah.
life. I won't run your life.
Yeah.
You are your own adult. But I think that's one thing too that I talk about because I hate and love the question, what would you give the advice? What advice would you give
Yeah.
to someone who's going through this and wants to leave? That is the hardest time
Hmm.
ever.
Ever.
Leaving is so hard. You face so many things that you never in your life would dream come.
Yeah.
And in trauma, I think you are conditioned to come up with plan A, B, C, and D all the way through F. And
Yep.
then this thing comes out of nowhere when you feel like you're so good at seeing any possible thing that's going
Hmm.
to come your way and it kicks you square in the face. And it's so hard. But the one thing I will say is the moment you realize you are not managing another person that is never
Yeah.
going to be happy,
Yeah.
that is so much easier and so worth it. But I don't know, and I have yet to find the words that will express that even though you face all of the hard things, the
Yeah.
moment you realize that you're not responsible for that other person that you will never please,
Yeah.
it is the most relieving feeling on the planet.
Oh, I just because if we haven't had that, because I hadn't had that, because when I was rebuilding my life, right after 33 years of marriage, no, I was rebuilding all 55 years of my life,
Hmm.
going like, who the hell am I?
Yes.
And what do I even like? So to me, like I would tell friends that and stuff, and a couple of them who are just like really healthy and whatever, they were like, you get to do whatever you want. You get to choose who you want to be and all that. And so for me, there's people who say things to me on social media, like not on my podcast page, but like on my personal page, who are like, well, remember, you believe this way and blah, blah, blah. And I go, actually, I don't. Actually, I don't
No.
anymore. Like
Yeah.
you don't know me. I'm actually about 3.5 years old. You actually don't know me because
Hmm.
frankly, I don't know me. I don't know. I
Exactly.
don't know who
Well,
I
and
am.
that honestly was the scariest part for me,
Yeah.
like to be like, okay, but what is my favorite thing? What do I want to do in my free time? Like that was
Right.
the scariest question I ever asked myself. And like that felt so dumb and intimidating as this mom of three who I
Yeah.
feel like I'm supposed to have all the answers. I'm supposed to be
Right.
teaching these tiny humans these lessons, not learning them myself.
Right.
And that felt very overwhelming.
Yeah, especially since you were with him since you were a kid, right?
Yes.
And so you didn't have a full brain. You guys are young and you're growing up together. And we make those accommodations. We start self-abandoning. So who knows? Who knows what your favorite color is or anything? My son lives with me and he's like, do we want to do red or green enchiladas? And I stopped and I was like, I don't know. I've never been allowed to choose. Hold on. Let me think about it. It's like,
Right?
it's those kinds of things that you don't think about. Like that, we're not going to sit there and talk about that in therapy because that's not something that's going to come up until it comes up in real life.
Yeah.
And look, you can cry about it if you want. I just said, wait a second, hold on. Let me think.
Yeah.
Let me wait. I get to make a choice. And yeah, so many things even ran through my head in that time. Like, well, he always liked green. Do I like green? I don't know. Do I want red? Who knows? I mean, it's so,
Yes.
but these are the things that you're going to learn as you're going along. And listen, it's exciting rather than it. Don't make it feel like it's sad. You don't have to be sad about it. It's sad that we have to learn all these things, but listen, it's exciting to have that peace once you're out. And
Yeah.
they're going to have to go. Everybody's going to have to go and listen. We'll put a link to like I know we have a link to your YouTube, but we'll have to put a link to like your story, maybe on Beyond the Monsters, unless you have it somewhere else, because that one was really good. And the hell you went through is intense. It's
It
like,
was a lot. It's so hard to condense it and get
oh,
people
yeah.
to really understand. Like I've done a couple of podcasts recently, but the two
Okay.
like bigger ones that I've done. So I interviewed with Tyler Hall on the Roller Coaster podcast,
Okay.
and that one was a shorter episode. His interview format is much different than anything I was used to. And so
Mm,
that was more of like a 35-minute episode.
okay.
And so if people want like a short condensed version,
Yeah.
that's a good one. Or if you
If
want
you
more
want
of the whole
the
shebang,
4 hour
then
version.
yes, then you can listen to the Beyond the Monsters one. And it's the thing, I lived it for such a long time and I
Yeah.
didn't believe that it was abuse. And I
Right.
say this all the time and it still makes me feel so uncomfortable to say it out loud, but there were I still believe to this day that the emotional stuff I went through was so much harder than anything physical I went through.
Hmm.
And I suffered that for so much longer, but didn't
Hmm.
even realize it.
Yep.
And so I really want people to understand that. And I
Thank you
think
for
unless
saying
you
that.
give context, how would you know? Like we've talked about this.
Hmm.
None of this looks like a big deal if you look at it
Right.
in this little teeny tiny version of
Exactly.
what it is.
Exactly.
And so there were so many times where I wanted things to make sense and no one was like, no, this is what it was and this wasn't right. And
Yeah,
so,
it's true. I mean, because when I got out of my marriage, I was divorced for irreconcilable differences and we went on our merry way. And then I started unraveling and I was like, wait, oh shit. Like
yes,
about 3 months in, I was like, oh shit, I was in abuse. And because, see, look, I'm Gen X. Our generation, if you weren't being hit, you weren't in abuse. And so that's what I was taught. Then we're taught the fairy tale. Of course, we're all taught Disney, the fairy tale. We're going to have the white knight sweeping us off our feet and all that stuff. And all of that, that's what we've been promised in society, right? And if we're the good girl and do the right thing, and I'm sure in your religion too, I grew up that way too, that if you do the right thing and you're a good girl, then you're going to get this great life.
hmm,
Then to find yourself in the life that you were in, it's to me, that was heartbreaking. I feel like I wasted a
yes.
lot of years. I'm still grieving that part. That's okay. We'll just keep dealing with that, going back to therapy, all those.
Well, and one thing that I heard you say in one of your recent episodes, I don't know which one it
Mhm.
was, but you compared it to like death. And I've talked about that sometimes, and
Mhm.
some people get so heated about that. And
Yeah.
I often say that I sometimes feel like death might be easier to
Yep.
process because this is just someone choosing something different or like just being an abusive person because that's who they are.
Yeah.
Death doesn't give you another choice. This is someone making the choice to do
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
And so that was so hard for me to reconcile within
Mhm.
myself. And that has been such a hot topic, which is so weird because
Yeah.
I feel like if you sit and think about it, that
Yeah.
feels pretty logical in my mind.
Well,
But I love that comparison.
yeah, and you're grieving somebody and a life that you had, that you maybe that was all a lie, that you like dreamed would be different, and you're grieving somebody who's still alive. Like
Yes.
that's part of the problem.
Yes. Well, and even my daughter, so she's 18 now, but we've had a
Okay.
lot of conversations. And at first, when I had her in therapy, she really fought that. She was like, I don't need it. I've healed. And one of the things that she said to me all over and over was, I grieved him before we even left.
Yeah.
And I did relate to that because there was a significant turning point for him where he was not the same human that
Yeah.
any of us knew. And so I understood what she was saying,
Yeah.
but also the mom in me was like, okay, but you still need therapy.
Right.
But I just thought that that was so interesting that even her, as a teenager at the time, almost had that same feeling around the same time that
Yeah.
I did, because it did feel like I was grieving my relationship with him as I was in it because it felt like I didn't know the person that I was with
Right. Of
anymore.
course. No, because I mean he's making choices. Like we're not going to say they're not monsters, okay? We have to remember they are human beings who are making choices. Like he's
Yes.
intentionally making the choice to do all those terrible things that he did to you and your kids. And so you guys will have to go hear the whole story. It's intense. Trigger warning. And
Yes.
lots of trigger warnings.
Major trigger
Yeah,
warning.
but I wanted to hear the whole thing. Like I'm a podcast junkie anyway, so I
Me
listened
too.
to the whole thing and I listen to her podcast all the time anyway. I just really enjoy her podcast. And so I just really enjoyed hearing your entire story because there were so many little bits that if you haven't been in abuse, you wouldn't think, well, what's the big deal about this part? What's the big deal about that part? And then there were a couple of times where I'm like, Lyndsey, no, don't tell them where you live. No, Lyndsey.
I know,
Lyndsey, run away from the monster.
I know. And I wish I would have. And it's so interesting because I do get so much negativity from some of the stories that I
I'm
share.
sure. Yeah.
And I mean, I guess I can share one of them just
Yeah.
because I think the one that I do share, trust me, there is 800 others that I
Yeah.
don't. I
Yeah.
have been very deliberate with the ones that I
Uh-huh.
do because
Yeah.
I think that there is a point and there is a
Mm-hmm.
purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so the one that I talk about most that most people do not understand in any way, shape, or form, and I like to say that, people who haven't been in trauma don't understand it
Yeah.
because their brain just can't wrap their head around it. But the last year that I was with my abuser, me and the children were, I say, essentially held prisoner. That is what happened. We were held
Yes.
prisoner in the home.
You
He was
were.
not
You definitely
working.
were. Yeah.
I was working an at-home position. I was working like 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. or something like that. So I wasn't allowed to sleep during this year. I was required to heal him because I had caused him PTSD from leaving the year prior. And
Yeah.
one thing that I'll preface that I still really struggle with to this day was there was no drugs and alcohol involved in any of this. And so there was nothing that I could be like, oh, well, he doesn't mean it. He's just drunk. Like that
Right.
wasn't anything I could justify.
Mm-hmm.
And so, after about 10 months of us being held prisoner in the home, I was being physically beat on a near daily basis. I
Mm-hmm.
had been locked out of our home. Like,
Yeah.
I knew I was going to die. And so I went to him and I was like, just let me leave. Like, just let me
Yeah.
go. The kids can stay
Yeah.
and I'll go. And then that's fine. We can get divorced. I know I don't make you happy. And
Right.
he said absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And every freaking time, I get a little better at telling it, but it
That's
is a little
okay.
rough. So he walked around the couch and he grabbed me by my throat and he threw me backwards onto unfinished concrete and everything started ringing. And I could like see him screaming at me and his spit
Mm-hmm.
was flying at my face, but I couldn't hear anything. Everything was just ringing.
Yeah.
And I could tell he was very, very upset with what I had just presented. That was not a good option for him. And
Right.
in my mind, I was like, I'm giving him everything he wants. Like,
Right.
I'm the thing that's making him unhappy. I told him the
Mhm.
kids could stay. He's still in control of the situation.
Right.
I was just leaving. That was my thought. I was planning on leaving, calling the police, coming back for the kids. That was my thought, not leave the kids and never come back.
Yeah.
in that interaction, he made me lay on an ice pack for almost an hour, hour and a half, I think it was, before he realized things are bad enough that I need to take her somewhere.
Hmm.
And he did end up taking me to the hospital, and I ended up with four staples in the back of my head. Because it was COVID time, no one was allowed in with me.
Yeah.
And so he went back to the home, cleaned up the area,
Yeah.
and when I was done, the hospital called and released me to him. And I went back, and it was probably like 2 or 3 months before I was able to get out the final time. And it was again just him getting mad and throwing me out. And so I tell this story because
Yeah.
people talk about all the time about how leaving is the most dangerous part for
Mhm.
survivors.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's put into context very often of what that means and what that
Right.
looks like and
Right.
why it's dangerous, what makes it dangerous. And someone who
Mhm.
hasn't lived through that, their brain isn't even going to go through that scenario and
Nope.
what that was. And so I find it so important to share that just so that people do understand like that getting out was so strategic and methodical. And it, on top of that, I'm sleep deprived and questioning every thought
Yeah.
I'm having. And so it wasn't this black and white situation. And I think so many times people are like, well, oh my heck, she's such the comment I get all the time. You are the worst mom in the world. You shouldn't have kids.
Yes. Of
Because I
course.
said the kids can stay even
Right.
though it was me just trying to survive. No one understand. I mean, not no one. Most
Yeah.
people.
Unless, look, the armchair quarterbacks are going to say that all the time, right? The Monday morning quarterbacks. And unless they've been in it, and even if you've been in it, because I've had a couple of people who comment, I'm thinking, are they a troll because of the way they're commenting? And they're like, well, this is what I did. And so I don't know why you did that. And I'm like, yeah, but we're all different. What I'm like, do not be on my page if this is how you're gonna
Yeah.
talk to people, because I can take anything. I can take any
Hmm.
comment people say, but I worry about brand new survivors coming in, or even people who are
Yes.
thinking about leaving. I think about them because I do not care. I have friends at the beginning when I started my page saying, Laura, somebody said something rude. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm like, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
I love myself enough. And so it doesn't bother me. And so when people say that, they don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And I didn't think anything when you told that part of the story, because I remember that you telling that. I remember that whole thing thinking you were in full survival mode.
I don't
But
even know what words to put it with. Like, there's no
no.
way to describe the mental state I was in at that point.
Yeah, you're just you were in full survival mode. I will do anything to get out of this situation. And what did he do? He threw you to the ground to the point where he cracked your head open. The part that kills me is that nobody did a domestic violence assessment on you and said, and you're in there by yourself. Now, thinking back, let's just think about it. Would you have said something?
See, and I have thought about that
Okay.
often because I do tell this story and
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
but my husband now was a first responder when we met. He was a firefighter for 18 years. And so we've
Okay.
had a lot of conversations about different policies that are had or,
Yeah.
when first responders go to a scene and how
Yeah.
that's handled because I know that if an ambulance would have shown up and they would have said, "Do you want him to come with you?" If I would have said no, I would
Exactly.
have been in big trouble later.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
so we have talked about lots of times of like giving a survivor that moment to be alone where they could ask for help. Because at
Yes.
that point, like clearly I was trying to get out. That was the goal of the whole interaction.
Right.
And so had I had someone ask me,
Yeah.
maybe. I don't know. I was able to leave, like I said, 2 or 3 months later. I got to find my hospital bracelet now because I
Yeah.
would be so
Yeah.
curious to see because I still have it. I keep it in my wallet.
Oh,
For the
okay.
first little bit, I had my hospital bracelet and for whatever reason it stayed. There were a lot of things that got thrown away, but that was one of the things that I kept and I remember putting it in my wallet. And I
Yeah.
remember having the thought, if I ever think about going back, look at this and remember
Yes,
like this
exactly.
interaction because there were so many things that I questioned and I'm like, was that real? Like, did
Mhm.
that really happen to me?
Yeah.
Because it feels, when I talk about it, it feels like I'm talking about a Dateline episode or some movie
Right.
that I saw. It doesn't feel like I'm talking about my life. And
Right.
so I needed this tangible thing that I could go
Hmm.
back to because you hear the statistic all the time that people go back and people go
Yes.
back. And I
Yep.
had 3 children with this man.
Of
So the
course.
chances of me going back were very high, and I
Yes.
needed that thing that just like grounded me to like why
I
I was
love that.
doing it.
Yeah.
And so I still have it. I put it in my safe because I was done carrying it in my wallet, but I still have it.
Yeah. Well, no, and I talk about that all the time, making a shit list. Or my last guest talked about that she started recording herself because she didn't know she
Mhm.
was really in abuse, but she said the way he was making her cry. So when she went to her car one day, she just would like recorded herself saying, "Look at what he's made you feel like." And we have to do that because when we are in that cognitive dissonance, right? And we're trying to get back to that good guy. That's
Mhm.
our entire goal the entire time. Like, I remember when he loved me and everything was good. We're trying to get back to that the whole time. I lived off of hope and breadcrumbs for so many years.
Yep.
Ridiculous, but that's okay. And so what you figure out is you're starving to death. So that's why you have to remind yourself doing a journal and stuff like that. I mean, I didn't have any problems having a journal. I wasn't in physical danger. But if you feel like you are, don't do a journal. Or
Yeah.
if you get when you're out, yes, please journal. Remind yourself. In fact, one of my journals has an area for a shit list in the back. So that way you don't go back. Well,
Yes.
because it's just important to train our brain to do that. So, what was his childhood like? And does this make sense for who he turned out to be as an abuser?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And I think this is another thing that people judge a lot because they don't understand the context. And I've made the comment, and again, it's so hard to condense
Yeah.
18 years
Of
into an
course.
hour
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
But when we very first met, he shared with me that his birth father had given up rights for him and his two siblings, and that
Okay.
his stepdad had come into his life and adopted them. And that was great. That was who he considered his dad.
Okay.
And the relationship with his with his birth dad was very scary and toxic. And that was
Okay.
kind of how he explained it to me. And so when my parents or anyone that I had in my life would be like, we don't like him, I'm like, well, you just don't understand what he's been through.
Yes.
And so I had this thing that I dismissed. And really early on, I noticed that he was very close to his mom. But I think sometimes you hear that. Look at how he treats his mom. You know, that's like the thing that you watch is how
Yeah.
they're going to treat you. And he loved his mother and she loved him. They were very, very close. And I mean, it wasn't bad. She was always very close to me. And like, I felt
Okay.
like we were friends for a lot of our relationship. But like, I did share a lot of really negative things that happened throughout our relationship with
Okay.
her, and she was very defensive of him. She
Yeah.
would kind of talk me down and dismiss his behaviors, and she would come up and be like, "Okay, honey, you can't do this." But at this point, we were married and had a child, and
Yeah.
like we're an adult. He shouldn't need his mom to
Mm,
come and have this conversation.
right.
But in my mind, I'm like, she's supporting me. Like that was how I felt,
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
And so then after his first arrest, I remember it was so confusing for me because the justice system in general is confusing. No one understands it. And so this was the very first time he had ever hit me, had ever
Okay.
been physical with me, and my head was spinning. I didn't know what was up and what was
Yeah.
down, and I didn't know what was happening as far as like the legal system and those
Right.
things and how it worked. And so I remember the victim's advocate for that city was new. And I remember asking her, what's my place in this? Where do I fit? If I
Yeah.
wasn't here, would this still be happening? And she kept telling me things like, you're important. And I was like, okay, well, thank you. Yes, I know. But like, that wasn't
What?
the question.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because I wanted to understand it, and she was giving me or she would tell me, Google it. Well, I had been monitored on my phone and I didn't trust Google. I didn't trust anything.
Google it. Oh my
Google it.
God.
And I think she was overwhelmed. I don't know. I try to give her the benefit of the doubt because we didn't have a ton of interactions before I made the decision to go back to him.
Okay.
But in that time frame, his mom was telling me, "You're doing this to him." And
Oh,
that was part of where that question was coming from because I was like, okay, well, I didn't ask him to hit me. I never said arrest him
yeah.
because what got him arrested, the first time he was arrested, I'll give a little backstory so this makes sense. I left, I was very confused. In the interaction where he was physical with me, he recorded me, following me around the house, recording me. And in that, I was so confused because I was like, why is he recording me? He's the one that's doing things weird.
Right.
And now I know he was trying to get my reaction. He was trying to
Exactly.
show that I
Yeah.
was being crazy. In the moment, I was so confused. That was the
Yeah.
weirdest thing on the planet. So after he left our home later that I did leave with the children quietly. My parents came and picked me up, and he later figured out that we had gone to my parents' house. The next morning, he showed up and was texting me and was like, "Come outside and talk to me." And I said, "I'm not going to come and talk to you. I need some time. I don't know what's going
Yeah.
on." And he said to me, "Oh, I'm calling the police then." And I thought he was joking because I was like, "What are you going to say to them?" That made absolutely no sense to my brain. And
Right.
the next thing I knew, police were standing in my mother's family room. And so I was so confused. And I was like, well, I'm just going to tell them what happened then, because he had told them when he called that he was trying to take the children to school and I wasn't letting them go to school. And so I was like, no. And so
Right.
I just said, no, he hit me. This is what happened. I'm so sorry. So they went and asked him. They were like, no, she's saying this is what happened. And he goes, no, I have a video. Let me show you.
Oh,
So he sent the video to the police officer and it showed him pushing me into a room and throwing a drink at me. And I don't think he watched the video. I think he thought this was his golden ticket, I
oh,
assume. I don't
okay.
know.
Oh
Because he
God.
thought like it was going to show me being crazy.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's what got him arrested. I did not know this. The victim's advocate and I were not lining up with our
Oh,
communication.
okay.
I did not know this at all. I just knew he ended up getting arrested and that his mom bailed him out a day later. And I was being told by his mom, I'm doing this to him. But I never said arrest him. No one even asked me the question.
Yeah.
Like, and so I was so confused. And all of that together with the fact that I was living with my parents at the time
Yeah.
and they were still very controlling. And I know that a lot of that came from love and fear and them wanting
Yeah.
to protect me and my kids. But it was really detrimental because I had already been very controlled and that felt
Right.
really crappy. And so I went back.
Right. Of
And
course, if you
not,
have the flying monkeys around you, right? All the enablers saying you did this and all that. And I want to ask, how long into your marriage was it this was the first time he hit you, right?
mhm.
So how long into
Yes.
your marriage?
So we got married in February of 2006, and the first time he was arrested was October 31st, 2019.
Wow.
Yes, that's why I say like that emotional stuff and the financial abuse and all
Yes.
of the different things happened so much longer
Oh, I'm
than the
telling
physical
you.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't understand because for me, it was all psychological, emotional,
Hmm.
financial, all that. And but listen, I didn't want to be alive at the end. So
Yeah.
he never had to hit me. Yeah, and this is the
Well,
thing why people have to be careful leaving is you never know. It could be
yeah.
20 years later and all of a
Yes.
sudden, yeah.
Yeah. And so all of this kind of led into the situation that we are in now. We did end up going to jury trial after his final arrest. He was
Okay.
found guilty. And it took me, I want to say, about a year and 8 months to divorce him after his final arrest. It took
Wow.
me a while.
Wow.
About a month after our divorce was finalized, I met my now husband and we
Hmm.
started dating. And at that time, my children had to go and see my abuser. That was a really difficult situation
Yeah.
because they had not seen him in almost 2 years, and they testified in jury trial against him.
Oh,
Not
that's
against him, but they testified to what they saw. I guess I always
yes,
have a hard
yes.
time with wording that, but
Yeah.
they testified, and so they were nervous to go with him and not have me there. And they
Yeah.
had to go the weekend that our divorce was finalized. I asked for therapy reintroduction. The judge
Yeah.
told me that I was petty and that I needed to be a better co-parent, and
Oh,
that the fear of abuse is not abuse. And I was
oh,
like,
fun.
so my husband and I were dating at the time, and I always would say to people, I feel like he's going to give the kids up for adoption. I just don't know how we're going to end there. And the only reason I had that thought process was because his birth dad had given up rights for him and his
Yeah.
siblings.
Yeah.
And so in his mind, I kind of already knew that it was an option, right? I knew it had to
Yeah.
make sense. It wasn't the state of Utah doesn't just let you give up children. But I
Right.
always kind of felt like that was where we would end. And after about 2 months of visitation with him, there was a protective order put in place for my children, or a restraining order. I don't
Hmm.
remember which one was approved. And I think that just made it so difficult for him that he felt he could step away and still be the victim in the moment. That's my view on it.
Yeah.
Because he called our attorney and said, I would like her new husband to adopt the children. I want to step away because they're hearing negative things about me. And so if I step away, they'll stop hearing the negative things and it will be better for their mental health. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. He sounds like
And
such a hero in all of this. Yeah.
And so it was just so hard. But again, like I think that his childhood
Yeah.
gave us the map for kind of what we lived. And I think that is so interesting to look back to now. And funny enough, I do talk to his birth dad still.
Oh,
He
how
was
funny.
someone who came back into our lives when I was pregnant with my son. And we have kind of stayed, and even after his arrest and the
Uh-huh.
divorce and all the things, his birth dad has stayed in contact with the kids and comes and watch their sports games. And our contact is limited with him,
Huh.
but like my abuser's birth mom has not spoken a word to me.
Wow.
And I in my mind am very confused by that because I don't know how you just stop having grandkids. Like they called her
Uh,
grandma. And so how
well,
do
just
you
so you
just
know, that's the same thing with my
right? And
kids.
it just is mind blowing because my
Yep.
brain doesn't understand that decision or that thought
Me
process. And
either. And I'm happy to even say this out loud on the show because, like, I have a granddaughter and she has, she did have, uh, so she has great grandparents. And, like, that's odd for any of us to have
yes,
great grandparents. She had five. She has five. None of them, I think, wait, two of them talk to her, three do not to the how do you do that to and then the grandparents don't talk to the grandkids. It's like, what the ever loving fuck, like
yeah, I
be
don't get
be
it.
an adult. Like, and so to me it's just it's heartbreaking, and I'm like, how do you look at this little baby and just go, nah, just not going
Yeah,
to acknowledge her existence. And you know what, I know that that's her own brokenness, so I want to touch on that because you told that story about your ex. We can see the patterns in childhood and all that, right? Look, we have our patterns from childhood,
yeah,
but we didn't go down the road of abuse. And
hmm
so that's why we have to remember when we meet people and they have their issues, it's not our job to fix it. It's not our job to save them. And it doesn't excuse what they do. So if anybody's
yes,
listening going, I will help them and I will be by their side, that doesn't make you a good wife to stay by their side
no,
because they had a shitty childhood, because they can go get help, because we
hmm
got help. We
yeah,
we we decided not to abuse people. We decided to go get help. And that's just remember that, because I didn't know how to hold. Yeah, I see where where my ex needed his love from his mommy. Got that. I
yeah,
get that. I don't hold any space for the grown ass man who could have gone to therapy instead of abusing
yes, yes,
every woman in his life, because he's really trying to get back at his mom. Like, that's the
yeah,
bottom line. Like, it's like such a mother wound. And so it doesn't surprise me, like the way his mom is to you, your kids, um, and the way she just like enabled him and saved him from the
yeah,
situation and all that. Yeah, it's not a surprise. So
no.
while we're finishing up, I'm glad you told that. I was curious to know where stuff was at. And
hmm
look, there's 18 years of stories. Look, I feel the same way. I have 33 years of stories. Like, we
Yep,
we just tell what we can tell. But I
yep.
I want to know, let's talk about the good stuff. So I want to know, when did you decide to start talking about this publicly and doing even a podcast about it?
So originally, I started right after my jury trial. The nonprofit organization that assisted me and my
Yeah.
children asked if I would sit on their board. And I was absolutely excited about that. I knew very early on that if I didn't find a purpose for my trauma, that it was going to destroy me
Yeah, I love that.
because it doesn't go away.
Right.
I figured that out really early on too, that
Hmm.
even going to therapy, doing all the work, doing all the things doesn't take any of it away. It's still in my head. I still
Yeah.
think about it all the time. I just get better at dealing with it. And so
Yes.
I think I realized that if I could find a purpose for it, if I could
Hmm.
find something that it was doing rather than just being this really negative thing inside of me,
Yeah.
that was going to be easier for me to process those moments as they came up. And so when I was asked to sit on the board, I jumped at that. And I did my very first candlelight walk with them and spoke at that event. And my kids were
Amazing.
able to come.
Oh,
And it
great.
was just such an emotional, cool core
Yeah.
memory that I will never forget. And that was kind of what started my desire to publicly speak about it. And there's a lot of mixed feelings that come with that because my
Yeah.
abuser does still live in my area.
Okay.
And I know he sees my interviews. I know the refuge asks me to be on news interviews all the time
Yeah.
to bring awareness to this because it is such a huge issue that no one talks about because it's
Right.
uncomfortable.
Right.
And as all of this progressed and I kept doing news interviews, I knew that people needed to hear more context to understand what isolation was and what it looks like in real life and not just a lesson that's being taught to people. And so I started going to high schools with the refuge,
I
and
love that. That's
it is one
so
of my
great.
favorite things to do. And that started when my daughter became a teenager and started dating because I realized I didn't listen to my mom. I didn't listen to anybody around me.
Right.
And so I wanted to inspire kids in a way that wasn't scary and wasn't a number and wasn't just some slideshow that they were shown. I
Yeah.
wanted to teach healthy relationships in a real way. And so they were already doing presentations about healthy relationships. We just kind of integrated my part into it and got it approved through the district. And there are times where I go with them. There are times they just play a video of me, but that's kind of where it started.
That's
And
amazing.
then as my adoption was finalized for my kids and my new husband adopted my three oldest children,
Hmm.
I knew that the podcast was something that mattered to me because there was such a standard that I held myself to in what healing looked like and what that meant.
Yeah.
And I feel like I constantly get judgment on the choices that I made or
Yeah.
even the choices I make to this day. And I felt like a lot of those judgments came from people not understanding what the
Yeah.
reality of living it was. And so I wanted to create a space where I could talk about it and bring more awareness to what the reality of it is versus the image that society paints domestic violence or sexual assault
Yeah.
or any of those things as, because I think the reality is so much different than what we make it in our heads sometimes.
Lyndsey, that's amazing. And I love that you're speaking to, like it's such a full circle moment. You're speaking to those teenagers, right?
Hmm.
Teaching them, hopefully they'll hear you. And I would have loved to have that information. I didn't know any of this stuff. All I ever
No.
heard was like, don't get pregnant. And it's like, that's it.
Yes, don't have sex.
That's
That's
it. That
all.
was
Yes. Yes.
that's all I ever heard. That was all the information I had. But of course, my parents were born in the 30s. So that's all, it's like they weren't really talking about that stuff either. And so that's why we have to keep talking about this. It's just wild to the feedback sometimes at the beginning. I was told, like, just forgive him, move on.
Hmm.
People didn't want me to talk about it. And I'm like, I don't get it. Like, why aren't we
Yes.
talking about abuse? And so that's why I'll never stop talking. Like, I can't stop talking. It doesn't mean I'll do a podcast forever, but I'll tell you right now, you will know every single day. That's a red flag over there.
Yep.
You need to carry one around.
That would be
Need to carry
amazing.
one around. But thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and everything you're doing. And we're going to link everybody in the show notes. We're going to put your YouTube, which is Living in the Aftermath. And are you anywhere else? Are you on social media or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and TikTok, and I kind
Okay.
of just do like an intermix of personal and
Okay.
podcast stuff. And then my podcast is also on Apple Podcast and Spotify.
Okay, great. Well, we will put everything in the show notes. So, Lyndsey, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Guys, go reach out to Lyndsey. And of course, we'll put the Beyond the Monsters interview in the show notes as well
I like it.
if they want to hear the entire saga.
Right.
I thought it was a good interview. I mean, you're very well
Thank
spoken,
you.
so it's great to listen to. Like the hour flew by. So, thanks so
Thank you.
much for being here. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me today on the That's Where I'm At podcast. Did the story today resonate with you? Do you think others would benefit from hearing the stories we are telling? Please go to Apple or Spotify right now to leave a review so everyone in podcast land will know you love the show. We want to continue sharing stories of hope and healing. I'll be back next time. I'll talk to you then.